Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Personalization Outbreak Podcast. Our guest today is David Skinner. David serves as the Chief Strategy Officer at Acxiom, where he leads corporate strategy and platform partnerships with the objective to drive growth for Acxiom's global business. Now, David has 25 years of experience with more than 17 years in marketing and advertising. Now, outside of Acxiom, David is an active distance runner. Wish I could be. And has relied heavily on his distance running skills to raise money for several disabled-related charities via his races. Well, perhaps that tells you a little bit more about Dave, but we'll learn more about him in a moment. So now, before we get started, please click the like button below, share it with your colleagues, and subscribe to our YouTube channel and social media at Glenn Yopes. Let's get started. You are listening to Personalization Outbreak, a podcast about the collapse of traditional corporate standards in today's more personalized world. I'm Glenn Yopes. I'm a leadership strategist, author, contributor to Forbes, and founder of the Leadership in the Age of Personalization movement. On this show, I'm interviewing executives across multiple sectors to find out how the balance between standardization and personalization can exist. David, thanks for joining the show. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Glenn. Happy to be here.
Well, thanks, David. I know we've done a lot of work to prepare for today, but one thing I think that would be interesting for our listeners and viewers is before you started thinking about where you wanted to be in 20 years or 15 years after graduation. I mean, how did you or what inspired you to pursue a career in the field of marketing and advertising?
Yeah, good question, Glenn. It's funny, I had this conversation last night. I was out to dinner with a new friend in the industry who runs an agency here in Los Angeles, and he's quite a bit younger than me. He's about 30, and we got into the same discussion on kind of how we got where we got. And but yeah, for me, it was, I kind of always thought I wanted to go into business. I was a bit of an entrepreneur as a kid and had lemonade stands and mowed lawns, and that was just kind of always the bent I had. And then when I started college, I went to Notre Dame, and the program we had there was we were able to take different business classes starting our sophomore year, and I kind of thought I wanted to go into marketing out of the gate. The funny thing was I was taking intro to marketing and intro to finance at the same time. And I just found myself more drawn to finance initially. I think I liked kind of like the structure of it. It seemed like a real, a lot of methodology to it. And I liked kind of the econ side of finance, of kind of being able to explain the world a bit with a bit of a quantitative framework. And honestly, my marketing intro class kind of left me flat. So initially steered more towards finance and tech, and I started my career at Arthur Andersen Business Consulting, which is bringing folks back a bit, but that was part of the same family that eventually became Accenture. First couple of years in tech consulting, started out doing kind of more back office stuff for financial services companies. I was living in New York at the time, and lo and behold, the internet kind of came into being in 1998 or so when I was doing tech consulting, and that really drew me to what's been my passion ever since, and kind of what got me into the ad tech and ad technology side of marketing has been really the human side of business. And I found in early kind of internet consulting and helping big enterprises figure out what the heck to do with the internet, kind of like what companies are saying now with AI. It was that same kind of moment. That's what really lit up my passion was oh, cool, we can be helping clients, and I can be helping clients with solving technology problems and bringing out technology solutions, but on the front end of their business, in how they deal with consumers, how they deal with their customers, how they grow, how they acquire. And so I kind of went full circle. Along the way, I was in consulting for about 10 years before kind of fully breaking into or entering the marketing advertising industry, and again on the measurement side. So kind of connects the dots between left and right brain. So I entered the industry more on the measurement and analytics side at a company called MMA, Marketing Management Analytics, and then kind of got into digital and had a good run there. And here I am on really at the intersection of data and tech and advertising too.
Well, Dave, it's clear that you've gone full circle from the lemonade stand to where you are at today. And fortunately, you trust your instincts to find a path so that you can combine the both worlds of how we think. And so as you think about where we're at with advertising and marketing today, you mentioned AI a moment ago. What are some of the big trends that you're seeing and that brands and organizations should really be thinking about and how to pivot?
Yeah. I mean, the three things stand out for me, and it kind of depends on where you are in the value chain or kind of where you sit in the industry. So whether you're a brand or an agency or a platform that kind of sits in between the brands and agencies, from a brand side, what we're hearing is really this inflection point between growth and efficiency, and where we've been in growth for a long time now, and even surprisingly kind of straight through COVID, right? You would have thought if anything was going to slow down growth, it would have been that. But we've been really on a growth run for a long time, and that's what brands have been focused on: is how do I grow, how do I acquire new customers? And we're now at this kind of moment of indecision is the best way I can describe it, where one, companies, brands or otherwise, are being asked to be more efficient by their chief executives and CFOs, and that's kind of the pivot we're seeing, or the big trend from a brand perspective. From a platform perspective, it's really we're seeing a world where the big players are getting bigger, and I think it feels like the air is being sucked out of the room a bit. And what I mean by that is upwards of 70 cents on the dollar of every digital dollar spent in advertising is going to Facebook or Google. And whereas even 10 years ago, there was, where I worked in ad tech, there was a whole bunch of players that were kind of fighting it out for a piece of that pie. This week in our industry, one of the big pieces of news was at a company called MediaMath, which was a platform partner that kind of competed with the Trade Desk, who's a name folks may know. One of the highest performing stocks in any industry over the last 5 years, and they've really become a dominant platform player. Anyway, MediaMath went bankrupt this week, and I think that's kind of a bellwether for some of the challenges that folks are having more in that platform space, going up against the big guys. And then to your question on AI, where we're seeing that most directly is in the agency world. Where I live, Acxiom's part of Interpublic Group, which is one of the big 6 global holding companies, and you have folks like Sir Martin Sorrell, who is a celebrity again in our world, former CEO of WPP and now CEO of S4 Capital, and Martin's out talking about how AI is going to eliminate entire portions of the agency ecosystem, whether it's hundreds of thousands of media buying jobs that are going to be fully automated or creative jobs. And that is certainly not the perspective we have at Acxiom or IPG. As you dig into the topic of AI, there are literally millions of people working, training models, working with models, the human in the loop, as we describe it, to kind of make AI work. And we don't see that changing. So I think, from the agency world, AI is a major trend, getting asked by our clients, by our investors, and there's some really cool stuff coming out with this generative AI. Both Adobe and Salesforce, as examples, have done big announcements in their creative suites where you can auto-generate creative in like just eye-popping ways. That will, I think, really revolutionize what we do as marketers. But the kind of the question, the existential question that comes to mind first of, hey, what does that mean? All the jobs are going away? Certainly not, in my opinion. But those are 3 of the big trends that we're kind of seeing out there, that I'm seeing out there in the advertising marketing industry.
So, David, how is the role that data plays in branding and advertising changed over the past 5 years, and where do you see it heading into the next 5 years?
Yeah, thanks, Glenn. Yeah, I mean, so data has always played a really important role in advertising and marketing. Rule of thumb is that, well, first, like the data can help brands find the hand raisers, find the people who are in market for their brand. Rule of thumb is that if you can find those hand raisers, there's a 40% higher response rate of a hand raiser versus the general market. So if Glenn's in market for an automobile and I can get my ad in front of him at the right time, you're much more likely to respond than your cousin who's not in markets. That's the idea. And the way that data is evolving is, first, brands with direct customer and consumer relationships have always had the best data. So if you are selling a subscription to a broadband service, or if you are a credit card company, or anyone who has that end consumer data, and hey, companies like Facebook and Google and all the data they have on us have always kind of had the best data, and that consumer data is what we in marketing refer to as first party data. So that is direct data about your customers. It's always been very important, and the trend that we're seeing now is that first party data is becoming increasingly important because some of the signals that marketers have been able to rely on certainly in digital channels like internet advertising or mobile advertising, those signals are becoming harder to maintain because companies like Apple and Google are directly turning those signals off. So the role of first-party data, this consumer data, is becoming more and more important because that's the only data that a marketer can really count on. So that's why we're seeing things like anytime you go to a retail website for the first time, you get a prompt to share your email and get 10% off or 20% off. So this creation of first-party direct customer relationships is really the top priority for all brands today, whereas previously that was more in the domain of the direct marketer. Now it's everyone from packaged goods brands like Pepsi and Coke to retailers are all on this first party data journey. The important thing to keep in mind, though, and I'll kind of speak from the Acxiom where I work perspective, is that even in this first party data world, third party data is still highly valuable in driving outcomes. And third party data meaning things that can round out your picture of your customer that are available from companies like Acxiom. So, for example, I've done a lot of work in the financial services industry, and Discover Card, as an example, has traditionally been more a consumer credit card, whereas Amex has traditionally been more of a business card. If you're on, for whatever reason, if you have both in your wallet and you're on a business trip, folks tend to reach for the Amex. If you're on vacation with your family, you may use your Discover Card. So in that example, Discover may want third-party data to know more about someone's business travel habits. Hey, is someone a business traveler? I don't know. Is Discover, I know their consumer behavior. That's an example of where third-party data continues to be important. But yeah, really the mega trend we're seeing is a real hyper focus on creating your own customer data assets and really treating that customer data as a corporate asset, because one, that's where the technology is driving us, and two, let's look at the performance of companies that are kind of doing best out there in market cap and stock market, and folks like Facebook and Google and Apple all have these tremendous customer data assets that allow them to be relevant to their consumers and deliver a good experience.
So, David, when does personalization become too much for a user? I mean, I'm getting all kinds of stuff every day to sign up for, like you said, get the discount. At what point can that first party data really overwhelm a user?
Yeah, I mean, I think important context for personalization is that there's the media narrative and then there's the survey results. And the media narrative portrays personalization a really negative way in a lot of cases, right? But if you look at real customer survey data, we all like personalized experiences. So McKinsey, Deloitte have all released studies, and they're consistent where I saw one recently where 80% of consumers prefer a personalized retail experience.
Hmm.
In addition, personalization drives outcomes and results. Again, in our industry, we see increases of 5 to 10% in conversion rates for personalized experience. We see upwards of 30% improvement in marketing return on investment, and the numbers all point up and to the right. So I think that's important context when we think about personalization. And it's your question of like where do you kind of cross the line from relevant to creepy is one that comes up continually in what we do. And it's hard to say. It's like the old saying is like, hey, you know it when you see it. My kind of personal narrative on it, excuse me, though, is if I've explicitly told you something about myself, I'm not surprised if you use that to show me a more relevant offer or just drive my experience. If there's something that I haven't shared that's used to drive my experience, I think that's where that line is crossed. Like,
Yep.
so for example, if I'm shopping on a retail site and I've purchased running shoes in the past, I'd rather see running shoes than yoga outfits because that's more relevant to me, and that's something that I would expect. If that same website said, "Hey, we know you've recently been to Arkansas. Would you care to try some fishing equipment?" That might creep me out because that's where I'm. Hey, how did they know I went to Arkansas? So I think it's the kind of what I've told you about myself is fair game, and then there's ultimately though I think you could also bring it one level higher to say, is there a value in this transaction? Is this relevant? Is this helpful to me? That's the first test, and then if something's relevant and valuable, then it comes down to, okay, how do they know that? Or of course they know that, and of course they should know that.
Yeah. So again, maybe a bit off topic, but now you've got me onto something. What are the ethics here, right? I mean, maybe that brand that continues to educate you and personalize that experience, but now that it may be offering different things, do you almost find that brand to be accountable for the experience that you don't like?
Yes, certainly. I mean, the ethics are being increasingly defined through legislation as well, with things like the GDPR, General Data Protection Regulations in Europe, or the CCPA, which is the California laws here in the U.S. that have explicit requirements on data owners. And what it comes down to ethically is, one, you need to be able to provide transparency to the consumer of what data you have on them. Two, you need to be able to allow them to opt out, of course. Three, you need to be able to respond to a request from them about what data you have on them. And then four, the brand is ultimately accountable to the laws of the consumer, whether or not that person is kind of in their home country or not. So what I mean by that is if a European is in the US or an American is in Europe, the laws don't only apply to those citizens, but they apply to wherever you are when you complete that transaction. So these are all, as I said, and it's complex because in the U.S. right now there are we're talking double-digit numbers of state level regulations around consumer data. Not to mention, get outside the U.S. and many regions and countries have their own laws as well. So it's complex, and in our world we advocate for some federal legislation stepping in here just to simplify it, because it's easier to comply with one set of rules than it is dozens.
That was an excellent explanation. I think that our audience is going to appreciate that, because I think oftentimes they don't know what's going on. And it's good to know that there are some evolving governance around these things. So tell us a little bit more about Acxiom. I mean, right person, right message, right timing. I know this is a mantra of Acxiom and one that you believe in clearly. Why are these factors so important, and what does Acxiom do to help the consumer get there?
Yeah, so kind of back to last question, or stepping off of that one, it comes down to relevant marketing, and consumers appreciate personalized experience, and they appreciate relevant marketing, and the mantra of right message, right person, right time is something that in the digital industry we've been talking about for a long time, and what that speaks to is to the marketer, to the brand, if you can nail the message, right? To tell me something I care about. If you can nail the individual, so who's in market, who's the hand raiser, and then if you can nail speaking to them at a relevant time when someone's kind of ready to take an action, that's really the holy grail of when you're going to delight the consumer and ultimately drive an interaction with your brand. So that's a little bit of the context around that description. And as Acxiom, we work with enterprise marketers to help them enable that. So whether it's providing them a secure environment where they can manage all their consumer data in ways that align with their policies and in ways that align with regulations. That's one way that we participate as a layer of a fully integrated campaign, along with other agencies within our holding company, whether it's the creative agency, creating those TV spots or digital spots, or if it's experience agencies who are creating whole experiences at the Super Bowl or an event like that. We are also a data layer to those kind of full integrated marketing campaigns and marketing experiences. Or we also help with creating a connected picture of your end consumer. And what we mean by that is, let's say you are a retailer, and just pick an example. This isn't a client of ours per se, but a brand we'd all be familiar with. So Best Buy, let's say we're shopping at Best Buy and we go into the store and we, pick up a phone for our wife or our kid, and then we log into the website a week later and go to buy an accessory for that phone. Like we would expect or hope that the fact I bought this in the store and the fact I'm on the website, you still know that I'm Glenn Lopez and as Best Buy, and give me that connected experience. So we help brands solve that problem as well. Of help me get the full 360 view of Glenn. So whether Glenn calls me or interacts with me via my app or comes into my store, I have that high fidelity view versus, oh, hey, wait, Glenn just called me really upset about a bad customer experience. And then later today, I'm going to send him a marketing campaign to try to sell him my next thing. That's probably not a good idea. So we help kind of close the loop on that identity, that consumer identity for our brands.
Where's all this going? I mean, the more I hear you speak, the more I'm appreciating the brands that have made my personalized experiences good versus those that maybe aren't so good. Maybe they need to hire you, David. But now I'm understanding the difference. But where is this all going long term?
Where I see it going is back to this point of relevance. We all want the companies we interact with to know who we are in a good way and to be relevant based on the interactions we've had before. And if you kind of go back, hey, let's look at this 100 years ago before any of this technology existed. And if you go to your general store, you go to your where you buy your suits or your clothes, or if you go to your local restaurant, you expect, if you've been there a number of times, that and maybe they'll recommend something for you based on what you bought in the past, or maybe they know you have a family, so they'll steer you towards this thing or that thing. I think that's where this is all going, is that level of kind of personal nuance and personal relationship that we have in our human interactions, and that we expect that as we're interacting with humans in these digital channels, it will have that same kind of experience. And the funny thing is that I've been doing this since I've been in the industry now for about 20 years. I've been in the digital industry for about a little bit less than that, but the technology to do this has been available for a long time. We've been able to personalize websites since the early 2000s. It just hasn't been, I think, well deployed or widely distributed, and we're still on this. We are still on this journey as marketers and as brands of being able to kind of execute on what's technically possible. So the text there, there's the art of the possible is all there, and it's really a matter of I think as consumers and as people, and kind of our bar has gotten pretty high, right? We know the brands who we interact with and who do this well, and we spend more time with those than those who don't. I think that's what's going to kind of steer industry this way is just our expectations of the world as consumers.
So to kind of close here, David, how does this all boil down to earning loyalty and trust? I mean, I think most consumers that are active online, at least for me, I'm a bit forgiving, right? But there comes a point where that forgiveness is lost. You think that on the user side, there's a lot more forgiveness as it relates to these evolving technologies and the way brands are trying to engage with them? Where's trust fall into place?
Yeah, I mean, you remind me of the old kind of the old adage of it takes years or decades to build a reputation, but you can ruin a reputation in a matter of minutes. And my perspective is I feel consumers are kind of less patient and increasingly less patient. And if you look at even generationally, I think the younger generations especially have a high bar for kind of what they expect, and also have really strong awareness of kind of what the rules of the road are. If I think about my oldest son is 17 years old, and he manages his digital life very close to the vest. Like, he is rarely kind of logged in. He rarely is ever using his real name. He says things like, "I can't believe you and mom post things on Instagram of yourselves." That I would never do that. So all that said, I think the bar is high, and I think getting it right is important. And I think the expectations of what a good personalized, relevant experience are increasingly going up.
Hey, David, this has been very educational. I mean, I've gotten a lot out of this, and I think our audience will too. And it's interesting because I live on the side of the coin that deals with the workplace. And as I hear everything that you're saying, I think maybe other people can translate this into their own lives as workers, and why it's easy to lose their trust too if what a brand is doing doesn't matter to them. And I think this is the moral of the story, right? As long as we're, on point on being consistent into what matters to the consumer, life will be good. But to the point where that shifts, things can shift quickly. Is that about right?
Exactly. Thank you nailed it, Glenn.
Well, David, listen, thanks again for your time. Looking forward to staying in touch, and we really appreciate you, in emboldening us with your knowledge and wisdom. So thanks again, David. Appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. Thank you, Glenn.
Well, as we leave every show, when you lead in the age of personalization, you will see things that others don't, do what others won't, and keep pushing when prudence says quit. Thanks, David.
Thanks, Glenn.
Thanks for listening to Personalization Outbreak. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a show. If you enjoyed the content, visit ageofpersonalization.com to check out our free streaming video series and learn how to get involved in the movement. I'm Glenn Yopes. I wish you a good day, and remember, without strategy, change is merely substitution, not evolution.